Hi, I am Yasmina and I love rugby and I'm also Ran's mom. You know what? I love him more than anyone else out there. Yalla, let's go.
Bro, I had to do it again.
You can't use your mom. It's not fair.
Can't do that every time.
That's not fair, Ron.
Bro, I had to.
Yo. But what were you doing there in Morocco?
You know what I was doing in Morocco?
I heard he was isolating himself to start a netball podcast.
Nah, I don't recall such thing.
You're the only type of person to start a netball podcast.
Nah.
Is it for the love of the sport or?
I don't know anything about
other
netball.
reasons?
I don't know anything about netball. I don't know what you're talking about.
So you just like to look?
Nah, bro. Nah, I don't do that.
Who's your favourite player?
I told you, bro. I don't do that.
Hi, my name's Jessica,
Hi, my name's Ava.
and we love rugby.
Ron, you should do that netball podcast.
Hi, my name's Natalie. I love rugby and I just want to say, run, do that netball podcast.
My name's Joshua Landsberg and I play for Hurricanes under 16. And there's a little rumour going around that Ron's moving to netball podcasting, and that might work out for him because he's got those quick little feet, so you never know what will happen.
Hi, I'm Tara and I like rugby, but I love netball.
We play for Hurricanes. My name's Maya.
My name's Jamie.
And hi, my name's Lauren. I also play for Hurricanes. So we heard about Ron's little idea, and considering he's a little guy, we think netball would be perfect for him with his fancy footwork.
Ron, I have refereed you playing netball and you're terrible at it. Don't do it.
I'm Steph and I love rugby. All these rumours I keep hearing about Ron, where is he now? About him starting a podcast for netball. Are they true or aren't they? We'll have to wait and see.
I heard this thing about netball podcast. No, there is no netball podcast. Finish.
Welcome to another episode of the Box Kick Rugby Podcast. I'm joined here with Ron,
I'm back, boys.
the netball enthusiast, and Luke de Jong. Do you want to say hi?
Hello.
It was an exciting week with the Argentinians in town. Did you guys enjoy playing?
I mean, I didn't play.
Or
He wasn't
not
playing, he was
you,
in
but
Morocco.
did you enjoy playing?
Yeah, it's a big difference between Dubai and Argentina with rugby, yeah.
I heard you guys were telling me that the game speed is just like, it's crazy there. How did you guys feel playing against them? What was like the
First 5 minutes I was gone,
Gassed.
completely gassed. I was like, I've never experienced this before. We played the B team for the under-19s, and that game is by far the hardest game I've ever played. It's not that they're too physical, it's just someone goes down and then quick rock speed.
How's the skill on that like?
Skills are good, everything's fast.
Yeah, you say it's not too physical, but you went in the forwards. When those pods run at you, they're pretty hard.
Yeah.
It's difficult to tackle.
How was managing the backline? Like, did you feel pressured most of the time?
Yeah, no, I couldn't. It was hard to get the ball away. They're always targeting the 10, just quick line speed.
But that's always good when you play a touring team to like experience those, you know.
I remember the whole time Luke was complaining about the forwards keep messing up the lineouts, but I kept telling him like it's impossible to play against.
There's nothing
them.
you can do.
Every lineout, they read us exactly. It was so difficult.
Yeah.
This week's feature match is the boys under 14s, Harlequins versus Hurricanes. After a loss there at HSBC, they had avenged themselves, the Quins.
I mean, I watched the game this morning, and I can tell you, man of the match was Freddie Firebrace, and some of the standouts I have here: Landon Puatua and Qadir Hari.
Yeah, equally on the Hurricane side, I thought Harley Benton, Alex Caswell, and Felix Chalens were all great.
And by the way, where's Ankh?
There was a bit of incidents on Valentine's Day. He wrote a letter to my mom saying he loves how she embraces her mistakes, and ever since she's been hugging him.
She wouldn't let him go.
So guys, remember the video we made? That rugby marketing video?
We love rugby.
We got an email asking for one of the actions we did in that video.
Oh, tires. I think I know what that is.
Well, I was running through the tires, yeah.
You know, the question is, what is that and how does it relate to rugby?
Well, tires directly simulate running a forward running a pod in a game, where it's running between two defenders and going through the gap in the tackle. It basically helps you just run through with power.
Simulates the height you need to run at and how to keep the ball. Because
Yeah.
those tires try and rip the ball from you.
Yeah, a lot of the time.
Same way when someone tries to tackle and rip the ball, you just keep the ball and just go at a good level.
So even if you get carried back, tires help you keep the ball, prevent a knock on.
You're just a harder runner in general. Like, it doesn't matter what size you are. You're just running through two people, and it's just, they feel it more, and it's good.
It helps you feel all the forces that you normally get in a double tackle, where you get hit from both sides, but as well, like how to use your leg drive, how to drive through the tackle, and basically try and get over that advantage line.
Fight in the tackle as well.
Fight.
Like, be aggressive in it. And that's always good.
Because a lot of the times, if you run into two players and they make that first tackle, after they hit you, they tend to like just grab and like sort of let go. If you fight through that, there's a lot of the times where they just slip off you. There's a good example of someone running tires in a game. I'm pretty sure everyone's seen the clips. We call him the Rhino. We'll show you the clip right now.
Yeah, that's a great video of what the tires actually simulate.
Yeah, exact replica. Two players running straight through the gap. It's perfect.
Man, Damien Dillon is like also a perfect example. In that test match, he just runs through people.
Yeah, the autumn series.
Yeah, in the autumn series, he fights in the tackle, doesn't let go of the ball.
Okay, guys, let's move on to our first interview of the week, focusing on concussion. Very important subject for players, parents, first aiders. It's a big part of rugby. It happens all the time.
100%.
For this interview, Unk caught up with Tania Mayne, the head of medical for UAE Rugby. Here it is now.
We're honored today to welcome Tania Mayne, the UAE Rugby Football Union medical manager. Tania is a neurophysiotherapist who specializes, amongst other things, in concussion rehabilitation. And out of the Optimal Clinic, I think, in Dubai Studio City, there's two things I've noticed over the last, I reckon, 2 to 3 years. We've got more ACL tears and concussions than I've ever seen in rugby. We're not talking ACLs today. That's something that we're working on behind the scenes. But is that something you have observed in your experience in rugby as well? Or are we seeing an increase in concussions?
I think there is an increase. It's a little bit like when you understand what you're looking at. So you're reporting more because we have the understanding. So it's in medicine in general, once you understand the symptoms of something and that is put in the public domain, everybody is starting to learn how to see what a potential concussion is. So yes, there's more reporting. Doesn't mean that there are necessarily more concussions. There possibly are more in the elite levels because of the change in the stature of the players, especially the men. They're bigger and faster, so their impacts are harder. But it's more about knowledge, knowing what to look for. So even if you look back in time, as has been done, and you can see all the cases that have come up legally, concussions were always there, just not recognized. And I think that's the difference. It's now knowing what to look for, and it's all about protecting people's welfare, player welfare. So I don't think there necessarily is a massive increase in the actual injury. There is when you look at it in a reporting way, in a reporting manner. When you look at it in the medical research, yes, there's a definite increase in numbers. But I think concussion has always been there.
A famous coach famously said that, rugby isn't a contact sport. Ballet is a contact sport. Rugby is a collision sport, and with collisions come a completely different set of consequences. And the reason I asked the first question was because a lot of players say they think when the legal tackle height was reduced, there's a lot more head-on-knee contact, head-on-hip contact than before. And so that would be interesting research, I reckon, in a few years to look back at, to say, has there been an increase in the incidence of concussion when the tackle height was lowered? We ran a little poll on Instagram during the week asking the players, whether they know they've got concussion. And just short of half of them said, yes, I know when I have a concussion. Bit of context, we observe players clearly getting quite a substantial knock in matches, leaving the field, and then lo and behold, 2 days later, they're back playing, and you ask, well, are you okay? And they tend to say, yeah, it was just a little knock, I'm fine. And when you dig a bit further, did you go for a concussion test? No, I know, I'm fine. It was just a little knock. I didn't throw up. I didn't have a big headache. I slept okay the night, and I'm fine. It's self-diagnosis is a problem. And does that potentially lead to concussion denial amongst players?
Yeah, I think it's all about making sure that player and team is educated. So self-diagnosis, yes, is a problem because ultimately it's a medical diagnosis. If you're not feeling good in yourself and you know that after you've taken a hit, you're a little bit like, well, I'm not quite sure where I am, it is best practice to get checked out. It's ultimately about the player's welfare in time to come, especially your adolescents. The first knock, say you've been playing rugby and you've had one massive knock and you're going, okay, I'm not feeling so great. That's the important one to get checked out. What we don't want is the knock-on knock, and that's your danger zone. We know that you can obviously have one single concussion that can be massive, but there have to be huge forces involved with that, or a pretty unlucky circumstance. It's the knock-on knock we don't want, because that's where we get the potential for change. And that's when that brain's going to take a little bit longer to heal. So yeah, definitely self-diagnosis. I think it's maybe recognition of symptoms would be better versus diagnosis, because diagnosis is very difficult.
We did ask that question as well as a follow-up on Instagram to the players around, do you believe brain scan is a diagnostic tool for concussion? And 65% of them said, yes, I believe a brain scan does confirm concussion. Does it?
No.
Okay, so what are the diagnostic tools available for players, parents, when they've had a knock and they're concerned or they just want to make sure? What's the right process to follow here for a diagnosis?
Okay, so in the UAE, I think what we need to really understand is what level of rugby we are playing. As adolescents in rugby, you're only playing at a community level. The outright rule at the community level is recognize and remove. That's it. The minute somebody recognizes some symptoms of a suspected concussion, they're not diagnosing concussion, they're saying the mechanism of injury is suspicious. The way that player reacted afterwards, even if it's at the time or a little bit afterwards, is suspicious. And they are not allowed to go back to play on that day. They then must get a medical assessment, and then they follow the actual concussion pathway. So that is the gold standard of all rugby at the moment in the UAE. It is only at your elite level and your world rugby level where you have the head injury assessment process, and that is a very rigorous process by very trained and skilled doctors, including video analysis, to diagnose or potentially diagnose concussion next to the pitch. And we still don't always get that one right. So there is no diagnosis pitch side ever in the UAE.
What do you use to diagnose concussion then? In your practice, what do you look for?
Usually we need a referral to be able to treat. So that's one big thing. So if you think there's a suspected concussion, that player must get a doctor to assess them. It's a diagnosis of almost exclusion and understanding the mechanism of injury and putting whole context, symptom context, and definitely the mechanism of injury, as I've said, into the story and going, this is not a bleed on the brain. It is not dizziness. It is not something that can be explained by any other manner. Therefore, it is more likely to be concussion. It is about using our clinical experience and putting that whole story together. So when a player comes to me, usually there's been a doctor involved. When they come to me, I do a very rigorous assessment. It usually lasts about an hour and a half, depending on how the player presents at the time. And if you look at the brain is a brilliant and absolutely magnificent organ in the body, but it is so unbelievably complex. And we have to divide and look at each part and how that brain is functioning. And ultimately, concussion is a functional injury to the brain. So you don't just get one thing that goes wrong, or potentially goes wrong. You get quite a multitude of symptoms that can be explained by other things, for sure, easily. But in a big story, when you put everything together, you're going, this is more likely to be concussion, and I'm going to rehab as such.
Are there any recommendations? We have one from the podcast side. And I think they follow this, the World Rugby level. And I know it's not something that's mandated in the UAE at community level, but we think it's probably valuable to have a baseline test at the beginning of the season so that there's something to refer to when that suspected injury happened. Do you think that's a good idea for players to have a baseline at the beginning of the season?
Yeah, that's quite a contentious issue. Baselines were, when I started working in concussion here in the UAE about 8 years ago, we used a baseline test. Now, when you come down to the actual research, the baseline at the adult level can show us how that person functions at that level. You can use the current SCAT, which is your sport concussion assessment tool. You can use that, the SCAT-6, which is your new tool, as a baseline. You could also use your online tools, and there are various online tools that have various research behind them, some more than others, but they also only look at aspects of the functioning of the player. If you have a team where you have a medical person or a coach that knows that team really well in adults, let's just separate that for a minute, then I think a baseline is valuable. But that coach needs to know, or that medical person needs to know that player in context, because then you can see what happens if there's an injury and things change. In adolescence, you're constantly developing and growing. So if we take a baseline of, say, we do what we used to do, there's the impact test that's out there, there's the cog state test that's out there, and now we've got a new test called a Neuroflex test. There are various ones that are out there that are computerized or digital. Those will change so often in 1 year that we won't know that what that baseline is what that baseline was. So within a few days, you've got a child that's gone through a growth spurt, their eyes have changed, their feet have changed shape, they've suddenly put on a couple of kilos, or they've become a string bean. Everything changes. So the baseline has little value at that time in that growth. However, what has value is if we have traits. So if we can understand their history, if I know a player, an adolescent, has had ear infections as a youngster, is travel sick generally, has eye problems, if there is an ADHD, if there's a dyslexia, or if there's none of that, I need to understand that history, because that will tell me a little bit more about what I'm seeing when I'm assessing that player. And the history of his or her behavior at the time of injury and after the injury is really important. So I can see what has changed. How relevant is that to the story? So the baseline is interesting. It is helpful, but it should be in a situation where the coach or the first aider that looks after the team knows the players well. Parents, obviously, too. The parents can give you a lot of that information as well as the players. If the parent says, Johnny is just not himself, that's crucial. I need to know that. Then I go, okay, there's likely something going on here, and we can then investigate what is causing any symptoms. Yeah, so baseline is interesting.
What is the average resting or downtime these days for concussion? I know there's various levels, right? So if somebody, for example, and it's something I assume you evaluate when you speak to players, is what happened after they got knocked. Were they knocked out cold? Did they vomit?
So if you suspect that something has taken place and you're suspecting concussion, you definitely need to have 48 hours, like total sort of relative symptom rest. So it's where you can participate in any activity that gives you minimal symptoms, basically. So usually that is coming off your screens, because our screens, especially your tiny phone screens, can raise those symptoms very, very quickly. So coming off that and have sort of a period of relative rest and definite sleep. Don't wake people up. Then reassess. But nevertheless, you always have to have a medical assessment as well. So you shouldn't really be excluding that step. That should always be done as a matter of course. And then it's up to the doctor to say, okay, we're going to monitor you for a week, 2 weeks, or actually let's get you started in rehab now. I mean, in the medical literature, they have tried to stratify, is this a serious concussion? Is it a moderate concussion? Is it this concussion? A concussion is a concussion is a concussion. If at the moment we don't have that stratification. So, it's not, if you have a concussion, you have a concussion. It's going to be a mandated time out of contact. So in adolescence, that's now 4 weeks, according to the Amsterdam Consensus from 2022. Now that's contact, and that's important. Doesn't mean that you're out of rugby. It means you're out of the contact. So what I try to do is to get people back into activity as soon as possible. The research is overwhelmingly in favor of aerobic activities as soon as it's tolerated. And that's crucial. So tolerance is very important. We obviously want to get the cognition, so the ability to think and go to school or work at school in the adolescence. We want to get them back to school first, but at the same time, we're getting aerobic activity. So now it's no longer one or the other, it's both together. And you're looking at making sure that even if there's a bit of a symptom raise, 2 out of 10 increase in symptoms, that's not a problem. If it goes away in an hour, that's also not a problem, but we need to start to move. So the more you just withdraw and total rest, that's not great for the brain.
The biggest fear, I think, why we have sometimes the self-diagnosis leading to concussion denial are players who don't want to miss out on matches, don't want to lose their spot in the team potentially, and don't want to lose fitness. And so it's encouraging, that at least the aerobic part can continue whilst they rest from contact. I think that's one that players can probably take away from this call, as it's okay to go for a run or go to the gym, obviously on medical advice, being tested,
Yes.
et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
But you don't have to be downtime 4 weeks from that or 2 weeks from it, whatever the recommended downtime was. Tania, a final one. Finn Russell for Scotland this weekend passed his HIA. They cleared him, and yet he wasn't allowed to go back on the field. Does that create perceptions that maybe these tests are not as conclusive as they should be if somebody subjectively can then still say, no, you're not going back?
I think we need to look at that level, at that elite level. We don't know the entire history, because obviously it's his medical history, which is private and confidential. That doctor, that team doctor, and I don't know if they had an objective. Usually there's a team doctor, and then there's another doctor that would be your World Rugby independent doctor. So that takes away bias in a match. That will say, okay, I've assessed, this is my opinion. But the team doctor has the final word to a degree. So they will be conversing. If the team doctor really understands that player's history, so there might be things we don't know, and says, on balance, this is not a great idea to send him back on. That is protecting the player. So player welfare is the top priority. It's about keeping that player on pitch for a longer time in a healthy manner for the rest of your life, essentially. If you're looking at all the cases that have blown up in the media, and they certainly have blown up, we didn't know these things. We now know. So that doctor is well within his or her right to be able to say, it is my clinical and medical opinion to protect this player, and this is how we're going to do it. Might be irritating to the team, but that's totally within their right.
Any other recommendations you have for parents or players?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's all about education and bringing the medical community together in the UAE. I mean, we've been trying for years and years, and I'm hoping to turn a corner in the next 2-3 years and bring the first aiders together. I think trust your first aiders. World Rugby is doing a great job. Push our first aiders. to a level that they are knowledgeable about what they're going to be doing. Also bearing in mind that a lot of the first aiders on pitch are parents. So they have a certain amount of information, and that is why it's recognized, removed, and it's player welfare. Education is paramount in this. There's a lot of stuff online.
It's a lot of volunteers and parents in the system. But generally, from what I've seen, there's great care for player welfare, and I think they're doing a great job. And thank you to them as well for giving their time for free, to do that. Tania, people looking at this maybe have a child or a player maybe had a knock in the last 48 hours, and they want to know how they can reach you. Where and how can they reach you? And Optimal Clinic.
Yeah, so I'm best just to give the clinic a little bit of a call. They're also welcome to reach out on email to me, WhatsApp number. I have my WhatsApp number freely available for the UAE rugby players. So I often get a message dropped saying, someone's had a concussion, what do we do? So yeah, happy to be contacted. And then, for me, all these parents, everybody that's out there, I've just recently sent out a call to get volunteers to help me to bring this together. So that's the one thing that I'm going to just tout here is if I can get just a couple of people to help to bring the medical, the first aid community together. It's an enormous job. I work full-time, studying full-time, have a family myself. We need a couple more people just to run this medical community that supports the players. So that would be awesome if we can get a couple of volunteers on board.
Well, I'm hoping we're going to find some volunteers through this podcast. I think it's a critical thing to support, especially with the way rugby is growing in the community here. That it can't continue growing if we don't have that part of the formula sorted out. So, anybody out there, please do help if you can, if you have capacity.